Happy Friday, Dog Nation. This is Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. As I was saying on Twitter a moment ago, it's not just any Friday here on DawgNation Daily. It's our Red and Black Friday edition of the program. We're getting ready for clean old-fashioned hate on Saturday. What we think could be a big win for the Dogs in Atlanta, keeping a winning streak alive. Dogs have won every game at Bobby Dodd Stadium dating back to 1999. The last time Tech won in this series. Jeff Sintel going to be on the program. We'll talk some recruiting stuff with him. We'll also get some thoughts from him on the Tech game. And a lot of fun today, a lot of your comments. It's all on the way next as DawgNation Daily begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So we're getting ready for Georgia Tech on Saturday. A lot of Georgia fans trying to figure out exactly what's this game going to be like? A Tech team that's been a little bit hard to figure out so far this season, and a Georgia team that, for the most part, has been steamrolling everybody, with the exception of the Auburn game a couple of weeks ago. Dogs look to get the taste of that out of their mouth with the SEC Championship next week, but for now, it's the clean, old-fashioned hate, in-state rivalry against Georgia Tech, and we'll try to figure out how this thing's going to play out. One guy who thinks he may have some idea is Dan Wolken, a writer for USA Today, a columnist that kind of focuses in on college football, and he tweeted out kind of an ominous message about exactly what's going to happen between Georgia Tech on Saturday. He tweets that nobody's talking about Georgia Tech, but the terror factor in that game has got to be off the charts for Georgia fans this year. Really? Terror factor against Georgia Tech? Now, I don't have to tell you, as you might guess, Wolken was, for the most part, roasted for this tweet, and you can really kind of put all the responses into a few categories here. You had the folks reminding Wolken that, Georgia Tech had essentially just gotten waxed by Duke the week before, gave up a bunch of rushing yards. You had folks reminding Wolken that Georgia has owned this series when the games have been played in Atlanta, winning all these games going back to 1999. And you also have Wolken being reminded here by Georgia fans that this is still Georgia versus Georgia Tech, and what happened last season does not change the overall trajectory of this rivalry, which has been heavily in favor of Georgia over the last few years. And I have to admit that, I kind of put myself in the category of the confident Georgia fans going into Saturday. And some of y'all know that that's not necessarily the way that I've kind of always been when it comes to Georgia this season. There have been a few times this year when I expected a closer game than some of y'all did. You gave me grief for it in the comment section, and as it turns out, y'all were the ones who were right, that the game actually ended up being, heavily, in Georgia's favor when I thought it might be closer. This is an example of one of those games where I just sort of feel like there's a lot kind of lining up in Georgia's favor, and I think that Wolken's tweet is going to be laughable by the end of the weekend. There is no terror factor here. There is very little for Georgia to be afraid of when it comes to Georgia Tech this season. I mean, first of all, as we've been saying all week long, the Georgia seniors, Nick Chubb, Lorenzo Carter seemingly especially, have made this game be such a big goal of theirs. I thought that Chip Towers had the great piece at DawgNation.com earlier in the week. We showed you some of these quotes, I believe it was on Wednesday's show on DawgNation Daily, about how one of the things that those guys had in mind when they came back to Georgia for this season was the game against Georgia Tech. And so when you have these motivated seniors, this goal in mind, my guess is they'll just go out and accomplish it on Saturday. To say nothing of the fact that Georgia is just the more talented team by a long shot. I mean, you're talking about an army of 4- and 5-star players for Georgia. You don't really have that for Georgia Tech. They obviously are well-trained in what it is they do, the triple option offense, and they've clearly given Georgia fits with that in the past, but Saturday does not feel like one of those days when that's likely to happen, because what would be necessary for a Tech upset here would be a lack of focus and concentration from Georgia. That's really the only way you get there. You do not get to a Tech victory in this game without including some sort of, well, Georgia just didn't have his head screwed on straight. Because in all honesty, in 2016, that may have been the case. There may have been some examples of Georgia just not quite, having its eyes dotted, T's crossed. They may not have had some of that in 2016, and you have to get that in 2017 in order to get a Tech upset. But the hallmark of Georgia all season long, with the exception of the Auburn game where they were probably overwhelmed by, the circumstances, the loud crowd and everything else, and, maybe lost some of the discipline in the concentration in that game. In every other game, that's been really the hallmark of Georgia this season. And that intense crowd on display during the during the Auburn game. That's not going to be the case at Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's a much smaller stadium, and there are going to be a lot more Georgia fans. We know that. However, there is also a caveat to my own argument, a rebuttal to my own argument that has to be brought up here. Tech is only about a 2-touchdown underdog in this game, and we see that happen in college football in regularity, two touchdown underdogs stepping up and winning a game, especially in rivalry circumstances. In fact, we saw it last night in the Egg Bowl with Ole Miss, who stepped up and on the road beat the heavily favored ranked Mississippi State team. Now, there's some extenuating circumstances there. Nick Fitzgerald, the Mississippi State quarterback, was injured, was out of the game, but nonetheless, emotion on the side of the underdog, Ole Miss, played a role in what happened there, and the Rebels got the win. So we saw it happen last night. Would not be the wildest thing to ever happen in college football were it to happen again on Saturday. I just don't see it happening in this game. It's also worth pointing out a rebuttal to my argument in terms of this one holding form the way that the Vegas experts think it's going to is that Georgia Tech truly has been a pretty schizophrenic team this season. They played pretty well in games they end up losing, like say Tennessee or Miami, played terrible against Duke, beat a pretty good Virginia Tech team. They've been kind of all over the map this year. So my pick in this game for Saturday is more about what I believe I know Georgia is, because I'm just like everybody else. I have no idea what to expect from Georgia Tech on any given day. This for me is about Georgia. It's not about Georgia Tech. And I'm assuming that the Dogs are going to go in there and take care of business on Saturday. By the way, Kirby Smart, in talking about the game this weekend, what do you expect to see on Saturday, was fielding a lot of questions. One of the questions that he was fielding is, I mentioned the long winning streak that Georgia has in Atlanta. Won every game in this series since Rick's, first game in 2001. That started the streak for Georgia here at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Kirby was asked this week, why do you think this has happened? And, well, he's probably just as much of a loss as anybody else is to explain why Georgia has lost some games in Athens, but never seems to lose in Atlanta. Here's the answer that Kirby Smart did give.
I think it's been more to do with the fact that, Georgia has played well there. I think a lot of the kids are at home. A lot of kids are from that area. I don't really know what to attribute that to. It usually has something to do with the X's and O's and the players involved in the game. And I hadn't really been part of that series for a long time, so I can't attribute it to anything.
Yeah, I think randomness does exist. This just may be a random outcome for Georgia when it comes to Atlanta. I do think the Georgia crowd there in Atlanta has helped, and I think being the better team certainly helps as well. The inexplicable part of the Georgia Tech rivalry is not all the games that Georgia wins in Atlanta, but the fact that Georgia has ever given any away in Athens. That may be the more inexplicable part of the Georgia Tech rivalry. Something that will be an impact on Saturday's game, though, is the need to keep the Tech offense off the field. When they have it, they chew up the clock, they chew up time of possession, and they will score some points. How important is time of possession for Georgia on Saturday against the Yellow Jackets? Kirby Smart also had a point of view on that as well.
I certainly think it helps. Against Georgia Tech, you got to score because they're going to score. It's not like anybody's going to go shut them out. They do a good job with what they do, so you got to score. Time of possession is critical for getting rest and keeping the ball away from them, but more important than time of possession is points. And if you remember last year, I think we had maybe a missed field goal and a couple field goals we had to kick and didn't get 7, and that really hurts you on these guys. You got to score when you get a chance to put points on the board because they're really hard to stop.
The other thing that hurt Georgia last year against Georgia Tech, as Kirby said, having to settle for field goals when touchdowns would have been better, also giving up some red zone scores against Georgia Tech last season, part of the recipe for an upset for the Yellow Jackets a year ago. That's been something that Georgia's been great at this season. Its red zone defense has been phenomenal. Kirby says that's not necessarily a harbinger of what to expect against the Yellow Jackets. Here's a little more from the coach.
Well, it's important, but you got to take all your stats and all your numbers and just throw them out because what we've done in the red zone has zero to do with Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech will not be concerned with what we do in the red zone because nothing that we've done is indicative of what they'll do. You know what I mean? Their offense is completely different. So we've got to play good red zone defense in this game, and we did not do that last year. But what we've done up to this point has nothing to do with what's going to transpire on Saturday.
And listen, for me, the bottom line is last year is last year. Give Tech credit. They came to Athens. They won the game. I don't expect the same thing to happen here in Atlanta this Saturday. I believe Kirby's got this team ready to play. They're focused, they're hungry, and they get a win over the in-state rival. My name is Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Good to have you with us on the program today. We got Jeff Sintel coming up in just a moment. Before I bring on Jeff, though, let me take care of a little business. Good to be back with you on Facebook Live today at 10 a.m. Of course, we're here for you each and every Monday through Friday. Took the day off for Thanksgiving yesterday, but it's good to be back today. Also in podcast form, wherever podcasts are found. We appreciate you finding DawgNation Daily. Want to quickly tell you about a couple big events we have coming up next week. Holiday season's coming in full force, so you're going to have to remember these dates because it's going to be a big thing and a lot of fun. Coming up on Wednesday, we're at Marlowe's in Brookhaven for our DawgNation Big Game Preview, looking ahead to the championship game next Saturday. We don't know yet who Georgia's going to play, but we do know we'll be talking about it by then on Wednesday. The Iron Bowl winner will decide that, 6 to 8 p.m., Marlowe's in Brookhaven. Hope you can be with us there for that. It is going to be a lot of fun. Last time we were in Brookhaven, it was a blast. It's going to be the same thing again. And by the way, if you come wearing your Georgia gear, your red and black colors, you will get a free appetizer with an entree purchase, courtesy of our friends there at Marlowe. So a lot of fun. We'll also have some DawgNation giveaways to do with you as well. Let me also tell you that the following Saturday, they're in Atlanta for the DawgNation Invasion to Atlanta for the big game there. And downtown Atlanta, going to be a blast. It's brought to you in part by our friends at Dixie Vodka. And if you were with us for our DawgNation Invasion to Jacksonville, this is going to be very similar in the Atlanta sense as well. Big tailgate kind of going all day long. We'll tell you a lot of the details about this next week. But just if you're going to the game or if you're going to be near the city of Atlanta, please be a part of our DawgNation Invasion to Atlanta. As I said, it's brought to you in part by our friends at Dixie Vodka. And also, don't forget to keep in mind that Dixie Vodka has got a great offer for you during this holiday season. They are offering free shipping on their products to DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers and SEC Country Live listeners and viewers. You got to go to their website, use the promo code SEC Fans, and you can get your shipment delivered to you free of shipping costs. So that's a great holiday gift this time of year, and you want to think about Dixie Vodka when it comes to that. All right, we're got a big show coming up. Later on, we're going to preview all the SEC games this weekend, all those great rivalry games, including that Iron Bowl that's going to have a big impact on who Georgia plays in the SEC Championship. Before that, we got to keep our attention on Georgia Tech, the game that's going to be played on Saturday. We'll also peek a look here at some recruiting stuff, including a name that some Georgia fans may have given up on who may be back in the mix. We'll see what's happening after the visit last Saturday. Let's do all that with Jeff Sintel right now. Happy day after Thanksgiving to you. Glad to have you with us here on DawgNation Daily. Hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
So it occurs to me as I welcome in Jeff Sintel to DawgNation Daily today, I didn't give away the Own the East t-shirt a moment ago, did I? That's probably something I need to do. Hey, Jeff, let me first of all say happy Thanksgiving to you. Hope you had a great day. I hope it was a nice time with family and friends. How you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you, man? Happy Thanksgiving, Brandon.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. If you don't mind, hold still just for 1 second, because here on DawgNation Daily for the last few days, we've been giving away an Own the East t-shirt. And, Jeff, the way I've been doing this is if people retweet from me at DawgNation Daily the link to either the video or the audio version of the show, I've just been kind of piling up those retweets together. Someone on our staff's been pulling out one of the winners, and I've been giving one away. I forgot to do that a moment ago. I guess I'm still a little bit of a Thanksgiving hangover here or something. Can I give my t-shirt away real quick, and then we'll get to our recruiting conversation? Do you mind?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
Very enthusiastic, he says that. Congratulations to Neil Jackson. Neil is the winner of our Own the East t-shirt for today. Neil, happy Thanksgiving to you. Grateful for your support of our show. My way of showing that is to send you an Own the East t-shirt. We'll be in touch with you very soon to let you know how you can claim that. But thanks for sharing the show, and for everybody else, thanks for continuing to send those retweets out while supplies last. We'll continue to do some of those things. So, Jeff, I will say hello to you and welcome you back into the program here. And a moment ago, before you joined us, one of the things I was talking about, before we get into the Georgia recruiting stuff, I was kind of talking about, you hear some national people saying, oh, Tech may keep it close against Georgia on Saturday. You never know in a rivalry game. Be careful here, Georgia. For me, on this particular Saturday, I don't see that. I see a comfortable Georgia win in Bobby Dodd Stadium. We'll talk about this, obviously, in the Dixie Vodka postgame show tomorrow night, but how do you feel about what's going to unfold here between Georgia and Georgia Tech this weekend?
Well, Brandon, I would agree with you, man. Maybe the biggest nugget was something that Kirby Smart said this week at his press conferences when he said they devoted at least one segment out of every Monday practice to taking care of Tech, taking care of the triple option, just being really aware of all their keys on all of that. And I think that's the great way to prepare for Tech. Not just do it once a week with a cram session, but to just layer it on week after week and over the course of a season.
Yeah, I think that's right. And not only that, Jeff, not only does that help the Georgia team get ready for the game, but it also helps the Georgia practice squad, those practice squad players who run that Tech offense, to be a little more familiar with it when it's actually game week, and they really get called into duty to be the ones to kind of give Georgia dress rehearsal. They're a lot more familiar with it if they've been working on it a little bit week by week, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's all about eye discipline and being aware. Everybody knows what that Tech and those A-backs and B-backs have done to the Georgia defenses over the years. So that's a question right there where the more Georgia is prepared, the more comfortable they feel with that scheme, the better they will play, and then nobody will have a rivalry hangover like Mississippi State has this morning.
That's exactly right. So last Saturday, one of the visitors I was probably a little surprised to see in Athens for the Kentucky game was Quay Walker, the linebacker from Crisp County, former high school teammate of Marcavius Big Cat Bryant, who went to Auburn. For a while, it seemed like Walker may go to Auburn, committed to Alabama. But I guess things now, maybe he's taking a look around here. Maybe he's rethinking about Georgia a little bit. Jeff, you've called me greedy before. I want every recruit to come to Georgia. But even I had kind of given up on Quay Walker and assuming that was not a name that we'd be talking a lot about for Georgia's 2018 class. Is it time at all to reconsider that? Is Georgia, re-engaging here with Quay Walker? It sounds like Walker would be willing to do that if Georgia wants to. What is going on here between Georgia and a recruit at one point in time they seem to have moved from?
Yeah. Brent, I wrote about him when I did. I kind of couched it in dog years, how so many things can change over the course of weeks and months with a recruit. If you look at Quay Walker, he was trending to Georgia about a year ago. Then that episode there happened with Big Cat Bryant. And then you find yourself in a situation where he was trending to Auburn. And then he was also looking at Alabama. Finally committed to Alabama. But the thing that struck me, if he told me maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago that he was planning an unofficial to Georgia for the Kentucky game, and he made that trip, and now he also plans an official visit to Georgia after the football season is over. So for me, you're going to get 2 visits with Quay Walker, but I really think, Brandon, he's more of a leverage recruit or a pressure recruit that maybe might force guys like Channing Tindall and Otis Reese to make up their minds a lot quicker.
Yeah, that may be true. I mean, it certainly seems like you've been hearing about those other names a lot more lately, and I think that different people are going to have sort of different preferences when you put the highlight film side by side. But that's certainly an interesting kind of viewpoint on that. Speaking of other linebackers, seems like I'm hearing some chatter that Channing Tindall, who's obviously a priority Georgia recruit at linebacker, is expecting to take a visit to Auburn tomorrow for the Iron Bowl. How big of a concern should that be for Georgia fans that Tindall's on another campus and a big-time atmosphere, and if it's a big win for Auburn, maybe a big opportunity to impress here? Should Georgia fans be concerned about Tindall's appearance on the Plains tomorrow?
He's got a good relationship with Travis Williams, but to me, I think the biggest competition for Georgia with Tindall has always been South Carolina. So I would just look at that as another trip. You got to remember, everybody out there has to remember that Luke Ford will also be there as well.
Luke Ford going to the Auburn game as well. And speaking about Luke Ford, to me it seems like, based on what you wrote this week about Ford, that the relationship that Ford has with Justin Fields is still the trump card in this entire discussion, right? I mean, Ford's been a priority recruit for Alabama, priority recruit for Michigan, one-time Arkansas commit, visiting Auburn on Saturday. But the one thing for me that has always felt like the ultimate, sort of response to any other school that might entertain Ford is, he's got the strong relationship with Justin Fields, and Justin Fields is coming to Georgia. Is that still the name of the game in the Luke Ford recruitment?
Well, I think Georgia potentially has another ace up their sleeve with Luke Ford right there, and that's with the way they're recruiting his older brother, Noah Ford. Noah Ford is a kind of a fullback prospect, a couple of years older than Luke. He was at Southern Illinois before he left that team earlier this year. Now, you think about Christian Payne. Noah Ford's about 6'2", about 230, and Christian Payne will no longer have any eligibility after this year. So when you sit there and you look at the way Georgia has also recruited Noah Ford for a potential roster spot, that's very interesting. And the other thing is that he's been cleared by compliance to take his own official visit. So Noah Ford took a legit official visit of his own to Texas last weekend. Michigan is also recruiting him in the same way, and Auburn is also recruiting him in the same way. So right there, the way Georgia has always went after Noah Ford, his older brother, is highly interesting to me, because then you also have to look at what this guy, Noah, man, Brennan, he owns about as many Georgia hats right now as all those bandwagon fans around the state do that just picked up on Georgia after their big year in 2017.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And, a lot of Georgia fans, Jeff, still have some bad blood with the Salukis. That's Southern Illinois, based on that NCAA tournament game in the early 2000s when Southern Illinois knocked Georgia out of the NCAA basketball tournament. So maybe if Georgia gets a player from Southern Illinois, maybe that might make Georgia fans feel a little bit better about the Salukis, maybe. What do you think about that?
Well, they'd probably feel a lot better about him if they got a guy like Noah, no doubt about it. And they got his brother Luke as well, because Luke's 6'6", about 250, All-American tight end, has another big bond like you established earlier with Justin. And that would be quite a haul. Georgia probably only has about 6 spots left. Might even have fewer spots left than that privately, but I would think Luke Ford would be a name that belongs in that group, no doubt about that.
Couple questions I want to ask you before we let you go, Jeff. We appreciate you being with us on the day after Thanksgiving here. Do we know how Zamir White's kind of holding up? His spirits are holding up post ACL injury here. He obviously tweeted out kind of a hopeful statement, coming back bigger and better than ever, he said. But do we know? Obviously he's not only about the long road to recovery here, but also the fact that his high school career kind of prematurely comes to an end. How are his spirits, do we know, coming off this ACL injury?
Oh, Zamir's in good shape, guys. He's already working as an assistant coach for his high school team. Remember, Scotland County is still involved in the North Carolina high school state playoffs. Zamir is encouraging. Zamir is hopeful. Can't wait to get to Athens and start his rehab and become an even better version of himself.
And then, you had an interesting Zamir White story at DawgNation.com this week as part of your Centel Intel. Him talking about some time he was able to spend with Jordan Davis when he played Mallard Creek. His Scotland County team played Davis's high school team, Mallard Creek, a couple of weeks ago. What kind of relationship does White have with a Jordan Davis? And do he and Davis together have any kind of leverage with another North Carolinian like KJ Henry? Could those guys have an influence on Henry's decision because they're all from the same state? How do those relationships work?
Oh, Brandon, there you go, being greedy. You want Davis plus White to yield KJ Henry.
Sure.
I bet. Did they have to put like construction tape or police tape around the buffet with you, keeping it going back and hitting up the cranberries and the sweet potatoes? Man, I bet you wanted it all.
Yeah, seconds, thirds. That's the way I approach Thanksgiving. The same way I approach recruiting. Give me all the 4 stars, all the 5 stars, and a little dessert to go with it.
Yeah, to answer your question, Brandon, I kind of thought that what was happening there with White, the way I kind of shared that story, is you saw White, who has clearly transitioned from a role as the recruit kid to the recruiter, and he's basically like a Dell McGee working on a lot of guys. He talked to Jordan Davis after they played each other earlier this year, and he said he wasn't just ready. He kept working on him. He said, come be a part of the Dawg family. And obviously that one paid off right there, and he still feels very hopeful about KJ Henry as well.
Well, that's good to hear. Jeff, thanks for being with us on our program here today. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your Thanksgiving week. We'll see you for the Dixie Vodka postgame show after the game tomorrow, after the Georgia Tech game there in Bobby Dodd Stadium. Appreciate it, and we'll talk to you then.
Hey, Brandon, that sounds like a great time. And, hey, man, why don't you give another T-shirt away, man? It's Thanksgiving, man. It's the holidays. Give another one out.
We'll continue to do that, Jeff. That's a really good idea.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Appreciate Jeff joining us in the middle of his Thanksgiving marathon, apparently. I'm kidding. Always great to have Jeff Centel on DawgNation Daily. Really good recruiting information from him, as always. Let me dive in here and talk about some of these rivalry games. And as Jeff said, we're going to continue while supplies last. to give away these Own the East t-shirts. Well, my guess is we should have enough to do it for the rest of the week. And I know that I owe some of you one because I didn't give away one for Thursday's show. The truth is we just didn't have the ability to time that right because we had to pre-record the Thanksgiving episode of the program. For those of you that normally watch on video that did click into the audio version of the show yesterday, we appreciate you doing that. Looking forward to certainly having you there for that. But we will continue to give away these Own the East t-shirts here for at least probably the next week, and after that we may be running a little low, may not be able to do it anymore, but we'll continue to do that. Let me also remind you that DawgNation Daily Today brought to you in part by my friends at MyBookie. A lot of rivalry games this weekend. Holiday time of year is great for that kind of stuff. It's also great for you to be a big winner when you play where the pros play. Whether it be money line, point spread, over, under, whatever, MyBookie's got you covered on all that. And right now, they got a special offer for DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers. You can get your first deposit matched up to 50%. But you've got to use the promo code DawgNation, spelled the way it's supposed to be, D-A-W-G, DawgNation at mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. Simple as that. Check them out online, mybookie.ag, and use the promo code DawgNation. First deposit can be matched up to 50%. So, I have to admit something. I enjoyed the Egg Bowl last night probably way more than I should have, because in this time of year and Thanksgiving Day, which, we have a very divided country right now, but virtually everybody agrees that Thanksgiving is supposed to be about charitable, feelings, goodwill, peace on earth, goodwill towards men type stuff. The Egg Bowl is the exact opposite of that. Ole Miss versus Mississippi State is the exact opposite. It's like watching one of those Maury Povich paternity reveals on like a 4-hour loop. I mean, you got players flipping off the crowd. You got guys getting, ejected. They're taunting the crowd on the way out. It's like an old, basically NWA like wrestling card, heroes and villains and everything else in between. Not to mention everything else that's kind of gone on in the months leading up to this game. It is the most bitter rivalry in all of college football. I mean, there is really no doubt about that. And it was a lot of fun last night, even if it was a little ugly at times. Ole Miss does get the win, and as I said before, Ole Miss about a 2-touchdown underdog in this game. They won outright. Is that a reason for Georgia to be afraid of Georgia Tech? I think the talent gap between Georgia and Georgia Tech, even though the point spread doesn't necessarily reflect it, is a lot greater than the talent gap between Mississippi State, who was the favorite, and Ole Miss, who was the eventual winner. So I don't take a lot of fear and concern from that. I do think this opens up an interesting conversation for Dan Mullen, though. Mullen is a guy that has been rumored to the Tennessee job or other jobs here, there, wherever. And Mississippi State fans on AT&T SEC Country Live each and every day, they scream at us and say, Mullen's not going anywhere. But what I said at the time was, listen, y'all say that now because you're happy with Mullen. But we know this, that if Mullen stops winning to the degree he's winning right now, that some Mississippi State fans are going to get tired of him the same way other SEC fans get tired of their team's coach. We're going to see some of this right now. In fact, you can probably go on online message boards, places like that, and see examples of exactly what I'm talking about here, where you've already got some of the same Mississippi State fans who are telling you about how Mullen's not leaving. Now they're mad at Mullen because he lost as a favorite at home to Ole Miss. This is ultimately what pushes coaches out the door in the SEC, and I believe that may end up pushing Mullen out as well. By the way, gruesome injury from Nick Fitzgerald. I wasn't watching live when it happened. It was on TV where I was. I was at my parents' house. My mom, fantastic Thanksgiving spread last night, but I missed the injury when it happened. They never showed the replay. Did you see it? You did see it? It's awful, right? Nate, did you see it? Nate, I heard it was just an awful injury. So I have managed to avoid that thus far, and I guess I'm going to try to continue to do that. So that's the story with the Egg Bowl. A lot of rivalry games in the SEC the rest of the weekend. Missouri-Arkansas is today. That's a game I normally wouldn't watch, just to be completely honest. But Missouri's been hot lately. And, Arkansas played a little better against Mississippi State last week. Is there something, kind of brewing for this game here today that makes it semi-entertaining? Maybe so. You get to the real games on Saturday. Florida State is obviously just a disaster. One of the people that comments on AT&T SEC Country Live said this game, instead of being on ESPN, may be better suited for Comedy Central this year, and I think that's probably about right. But we love the misery of the Gators here, and so we may check a little bit of that out just to kind of watch them finish the regular season on another terrible low note. I'm assuming that Louisville probably clobbers Kentucky. They want revenge from last year's game. Plus, Kentucky doesn't have a Lamar Jackson. Louisville does. Vanderbilt, Tennessee. You got a lot of great rivalry nicknames in college football. You got the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. Clean old-fashioned hate between Georgia, Georgia Tech. The Egg Bowl between Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Kind of a fun backstory with that. You don't really have one of those for Vanderbilt, Tennessee, but maybe this year with the Vols coming in 0-7 in the SEC, Vanderbilt coming in 0-7 in the SEC, maybe Winless Wonderland. Is that kind of a nice rivalry nickname for the Vols and the Commodores here? Maybe so. It is amazing to see how bad these two have become in SEC play this season, Tennessee especially. I've said before that I think that South Carolina actually probably keeps it close with Clemson on Saturday. I think at home, I think that crowd rises up, makes a lot of noise. I'm assuming Will Muschamp doesn't actually pull the upset, but making this thing entertaining and worth watching, I would give the Gamecocks a chance to do that. Texas A&M LSU, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts about. I am really looking forward to Alabama and Auburn, though. And, all I can do when I speak into this microphone is give you my opinion, right? One of the reasons why we do the comments on Facebook Live is so I can hear your opinion back. But this is one of those issues where I've got an opinion. It may be different than your opinion. We all kind of get together under the umbrella of DawgNation Daily and talk about this stuff. I really want Auburn to win this game. Not so much that I'm going to be cheering for Auburn. If they score a touchdown, I'm not clapping. They're not getting that from me. But, man, I have got such a bad taste in my mouth from that game at Jordan-Hare a couple of weeks ago. And Auburn's good. I mean, there's a chance that Auburn beat Georgia again. I mean, it could happen. But I really want to see Georgia, much the same way we've been talking revenge tour all season long, getting victories over the team that beat Georgia a season ago. How nice would it be to finish the non-playoff portion of Georgia's schedule by getting revenge against the only team to beat it here in 2017? Basically, what's the line from Godfather? Settling all family business like here before the end of the season. That'd be kind of a nice thing to do. So, I want it to be Auburn next Saturday in Atlanta. Y'all can, certainly feel different about that if you want. But that's what I'd certainly like to see. One more thing here before we close out the SEC through. You got some games around the country outside the SEC that's probably worth paying attention to if you're a Georgia fan, because they could have some impact on where Georgia is ranked after this weekend, assuming it beats Georgia Tech on Saturday. Miami Pitt is today. Now, somebody told me the game's in Heinz Field. Someone told me that they may snow in Pittsburgh. That's not true. I looked on the weather.com today. It's like 50 degrees. It's like a breeze in Pittsburgh. So for those of you who like the idea of a heavy favorite going on the road, taking some bad weather, Miami seems like all they've done is play home games the last month. But today, pretty mild conditions there in Pittsburgh, so you don't get a lot of help with the underdog here from the weather. Ohio State, Michigan is on Saturday. I could see Michigan playing a little better here. I know they lost last week to Wisconsin, but I could see them having a little motivation for this rivalry game. I don't really know what to expect from Wisconsin, Minnesota. Was it P.J. Fleck? That's the Minnesota coach. I don't know if he has them rowing the boat for this game or not. West Virginia, Oklahoma. Greer is hurt for West Virginia, so this will probably be an Oklahoma blowout. And then, those are the top national games. So those games, depending on how they work out, going to have an impact on where Georgia is ranked next Saturday as it continues to try to climb these rankings back and be in the top 4 where you want to be in the college football playoff after next week's SEC championship. But as Kirby Smart's been saying, and the Georgia players been saying, that's all to take care of in the weeks ahead. Right now, everyone around DawgNation got their attention towards clean old-fashioned hate. All right, thanks for being with us here on this Black Friday edition of DawgNation Daily, day after Thanksgiving. We appreciate that. We wanted to be here live for you because if you're working out and about doing whatever you had to do, we always say, if you've got to be at work, we want to be at work, so we'll do that for you. And for those of you who've been watching from the comfort of your home, well, enjoy your time off as well. I'm looking forward to kind of getting back and doing some of that in a couple of minutes myself. Let me take care of some final pieces of business before it's all said and done. Gator Hater Countdown, Georgia, Florida, next October. We count it down every single day, 337 days from right now. Georgia heads back to Jacksonville, looks to get another win in that Gator-Hater rivalry. We'll do that with you a year from now. We'll count it down every day between now and then. As Jeff said, I will keep giving away these Own the East t-shirts. I'll send out a video link, an audio link at my Twitter account at DawgNation Daily. Retweet from that, and we'll give one of these away every day while supplies last. Also invite you to join us for the Dixie Vodka postgame show immediately after the game tomorrow. We'll talk about a Georgia win over Georgia Tech. See you then. For those of you with us on video right now. I will knock out some comments here. By the way, Wayne Folan, a great viewer to our program who lives in Pennsylvania, says it's very mild today. Yeah. It's like when you're watching at home and you got like a big favorite on the road, you always like the idea of a little snow. There's nothing I enjoy more than watching it snow during a football game when it's not snowing at my house. I've always just kind of liked that. I like to watch football in the snow as long as I don't have to be the guy in the snow. So I was sort of hoping for some bad weather in Pitt today for Miami, but that's not going to be the case. Jacobo Simba says, hello from RVA. Holler for a quick drink. Jacobo, it's great to have you with us on the show today. Diedrich Frazier says, Miami on the road on a Friday after Thanksgiving early kickoff could be trouble. Yeah, you're right. And Diedrich, are you like me? I mean, it seems like it's been forever since Miami's played a road game. Virginia was at home. Notre Dame was at home. Virginia Tech the week before that's at home. Like, all they've done here is play home games as of late. Traw Dukes is back. Appreciate you being here, Traw. Nate Thomas says Miami's in trouble. Chris Sapp says hell with Tech. Yeah, boy, a lot of folks excited about that Tech game on Saturday. There's no question about that. Let me get back to these comments. I messed up. Hold on. I got to pull the comments back up, y'all. Apologize for that. Well, you don't do the video show one day, and then all of a sudden I'm all thumbs over here trying to pull these comments back up. Y'all give me just 1 second. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Terrific spread with my parents last night. Really fun. Let me get back in here. All right. Now we're back in. Pardon me. Nick Simmons says, I want to beat that number 1 team and get back in the playoff. So that's a guy who wants to see Alabama in that championship game next Saturday. And somebody said a moment ago, sorry, B.A., I just can't root for one of our rivals. Don't get me wrong. I'm not rooting for Auburn. As I said, I'm not clapping for them. If they score, I'm not going to be high-fiving anybody. But in terms of preferred outcome, Auburn, again, for the revenge factor, is my preferred outcome. But don't get it confused. I'm definitely not rooting for them. Nate Thomas. I mentioned that Godfather line a moment ago. Nate Thomas said, well, let's just take care of Fredo, which is Georgia Tech. And you know what happened to Fredo at the end of Godfather 2. Yeah, that's a good line, Nate, for sure. Tim Tatum says, my dislike of Miami overrides my like for Coach Rick. And to a certain extent, Tim, I kind of agree with you. Except for me, it's not so much a dislike for Miami. I don't really have much of a strong feeling about Miami one way or another. What my dislike is for like the national media people who kind of root for the storyline of, oh, Georgia fired Mark Richt, now it regrets it because Rick's in the playoff and Georgia's not. I cannot stand I don't want to say I can't stand the people. I can't stand the storyline and the way that some people try to stir that up as a storyline. Trust me, Georgia's in a great position here moving forward. It's bringing in talent in a way that it has never done before. Georgia may fall short of its playoff goal this season, but it's going to the playoff eventually, and it's going to, I believe, win a championship eventually. I think Georgia's trajectory is just fine. And there is no panic here on DawgNation daily about Georgia letting the better coach slip away. Georgia got 15 really good years from Mark Richt. I'm happy to see him having success. Happy to see him enjoying himself down there. But I cannot stand the media people who are always trying to sort of concoct some scheme to get Miami and Georgia in the same bowl against each other to, kind of sort of fan the flames of hysteria because Miami's currently ranked higher than Georgia is. Miami's ranked higher than, at number 2 right now because of the fact that the committee likes the idea of having drama week after week, and that's the only reason why the committee flip-flopped Miami and Clemson this week. Miami's not the real number 2 team in the country. Let me tell you why I know that. Because the real number 2, undefeated, if it lost a conference championship game close, might sneak in as a second team from that conference. That's not happening in the ACC. It's a win and you're in, lose and you're done scenario for the ACC championship, I believe. So I love Rick. I'm proud to see Rick doing well. In a parallel universe from one that involves Georgia, I'd probably be rooting for him to win a national championship. But what I root against, the way that Tim Tatum says he roots against Miami, what I root against is the kind of just pot-stirring, trouble-making media that wants to make Rick's success in Miami a problem for Georgia. I mean, y'all are as plugged into this as anybody is. We talk about it every day here on DawgNation Daily. Georgia's doing just fine, regardless of whatever happens to Miami. Traw Duke says, does Miami play today? Yeah, Traw at noon against Pittsburgh. That'll be their opportunity to finish off a regular season undefeated against Pitt. Armand Rashad says he wants to see Bama beat the snot out of Auburn. I hate them as much as I hate the triple option. D.L. Sutton says, house divided situation. Let me get this from DL here. He says, house divided. My son hopes to see Bama in Atlanta, and I want our guys to get one more shot at Auburn. No way they're that much better than Georgia. I agree with that. And DL, here's the other thing. And I know that for a lot of our people who live down there, whether it be Columbus or there's a guy who will talk to us from time to time who actually lives in Auburn. Those folks in that part of the country, southwest corner of the state, they do not want to have to live with this thing for a year of Auburn people, crowing about what happened in Jordan-Hare Stadium. They don't want to do that for a whole year. So it's almost like I want this for some of our audience more than I want it for me. I want them to kind of, win the SEC, or Georgia win the SEC, and give them a rebuttal against these Auburn people who have done nothing but talk trash since that game. And listen, Auburn won the game. I guess they deserve to do it, Gus Malzahn included. But a lot of Georgia folks want that revenge, and I would love to see Georgia be able to get that for them. Wayne Folan says 1 p.m. I thought it was noon. Is it 1 p.m. between Miami and Pitt? I may have that right. I may not have that right. Nate Thomas says the storylines involving, Rick at Miami and Georgia are just too strong to ignore. That's also probably true as well. All right, sorry. It's Trey. Trey Dukes, not Traw. I always say Traw, but it's Trey. Pardon me, Trey. Chad Williams lives down in Lee County, the home, by the way, of a maybe future UGA commit. But yeah, Lee County is a tough spot to be down there near that. Now I don't know if you meant Lee County, Georgia, Lee County, Alabama. Lee County, Alabama is where Auburn is. Lee County, Georgia is where Mr. Reese is, the maybe future linebacker for Georgia's 2018 class. Either way, though, that's a little too close to Auburn for a lot of people's comfort. All right, Wayne Folan says the game is noon today. That's right. Nate Thomas says, saw an Auburn person in the Milwaukee airport coming home talking smack. I want Auburn. Yeah, a lot of folks want that. A lot of folks want that. Randy Hall checking in Buford. Randy, we appreciate that. Junior Baker says Lee County plays Mays tonight. Well, that really will be a good game. By the way, Junior the other day in the comment section, we were talking about who the next Roquan was going to be. Junior had a good comment. I didn't get a chance to respond to it. He's saying that he thinks that McBride can be that guy. Now, I obviously love Nate McBride, but is McBride talented enough to be in that Roquan Smith category? Junior obviously follows that high school football stuff, the recruiting stuff very closely. I mean, do y'all think that McBride is in that Roquan Smith category next season or over the course of the next couple of years? I think McBride's an incredibly talented player. I just think that Roquan's extra special. I thought that Junior had an interesting comment on that the other day. Miriam Martin Corbin says, I don't care who we play in the SEC championship. I just want every game here on out to be a statement. Boy, I love that phrase, statement game. I think that's what Georgia's looking to do against Georgia Tech tomorrow. Make that big statement. I don't want to overlook Tech, and I certainly hope I don't get accused of doing that because obviously, Tech's a team that beat Georgia last season. But I do think this is a Georgia bunch tomorrow looking to show a little teeth against the Yellow Jackets. That's my guess anyway. Randy Hall says Owen Popo is going to be the next Roquan Smith. Now, that's who I think has that Roquan profile, Owen Popo. The problem with Popo is he's not going to be in Athens if he comes at all until 2019. So you got a year's worth of maybe no Roquan as a part of the Georgia defense because it certainly seems like Roquan is heading to the NFL. Derek Lewis says, I hope McBride can fill his shoes. Dennis Wood says, if Alabama loses, they'll be in the 2017 Ohio State and get over the SEC champ. Need to beat Alabama to pass them. I don't think that's necessarily true, Dennis. I mean, the best win that Alabama currently has is Mississippi State, and that win doesn't look as good anymore given the fact that State just dropped at Ole Miss last night. I think that Alabama as a one-loss, 11-1 team that doesn't play for the SEC championship, I think they would have an argument in favor of them in comparison to some programs, but not necessarily the SEC champion. For instance, Ohio State, I believe, is going to win the Big Ten. I just think Ohio State's so much better than Wisconsin. So imagine if Alabama lost to Auburn, and you've got 11-1 Alabama in comparison to 10-2 Ohio State. Now, Alabama's not a conference champion. Ohio State would be. Ohio State would have 2 losses compared to Alabama's 1. neither of Ohio State's losses are particularly redeeming. They got blown out by Iowa and handled by Oklahoma. Plus, even if the committee sort of loath to admit this, there'd also be a little bit of a bad taste in some people's mouths based on the fact that Ohio State got blasted versus Clemson last year. Would Alabama potentially make the playoff over Ohio State if Ohio State was a two-loss team? My guess is probably not. My guess is the committee may still go with the conference champion Ohio State at that point. But that's the kind of team that Alabama could potentially make it in over, a two-loss ACC champion Ohio State. Because the truth is, there's some national fatigue associated with both Alabama and Ohio State. They both have huge fan bases, so they're probably good for TV ratings overall. But nationally, there's a degree of fatigue involved with both those programs. Be kind of an interesting side-by-side with two teams that don't play each other very much, Buckeyes and Tide, but do hate each other. But I don't think that one-loss Alabama would get in over SEC champion one-loss Georgia. Georgia just had the better resume. Not to mention, Georgia would have just beaten a team that beat Alabama. David Hogue says, we shouldn't need to worry about hoping other teams lose. We just need to win each game we play. Dogs and a few others control their destiny. David, don't get it twisted here. My desire to see Georgia play Auburn again is not because I think it's an easier game to win. I think Auburn's going to beat Alabama. So from that standpoint, Auburn's the tougher opponent. I think offensively, Auburn does some things that Alabama can't do. I think Alabama's pretty banged up with its linebacking core right now. Not so much so to make them an easy opponent, but a little bit banged up that maybe hurts them against Auburn a little bit. So me picking between Auburn and Alabama is not trying to concoct the easier win for Georgia. It's about the emotion and the passion of beating a team that beat you earlier in the year. I think that both Alabama and Auburn are formidable challengers, and I think either opponent is a team that Georgia could win. So it's got nothing to do with me looking for an easier opponent. In the SEC championship game, really can't dial up an easier opponent. Junior Baker says, talking about some of those linebackers, he says, Jade Hunter, Monty Rice are outside linebackers. McBride's a filler. He can play all three linebacker spots. Hunter and Rice aren't as mobile as McBride. I mean, that one thing that you do see from McBride is that blazing speed. It is amazing how fast of a linebacker he is. And, frankly, how nice Georgia's depth looks at that position kind of moving forward in the years ahead. Doesn't mean that I still don't want to add some more of those outside linebackers. Looking forward to bringing in Azeez Ojulari. Looking forward to bringing in Adam Anderson. As we talked to Jeff about before, thinking about KJ Henry, the possibility thereof anyway. Looking to add those guys for sure. I thought what Quay Walker said to Jeff was kind of interesting. He talked about how Georgia told him that he may be like a inside linebacker on first and second down and a pass rusher on third down. That's a little bit how Alabama used Reggie Ragland, if you'll remember. I think that's kind of an interesting comparison. Justin Carter says the Georgia Dome isn't the only thing going down in Atlanta this week. That's well said. Hal Love thinks that the mobile quarterback for Alabama is going to be the difference on the Plains on Saturday. For me, I think it's the opposite. I think that Stidham's ability to threaten defenses vertically is the kind of thing that I don't believe that in a good game against a good quarterback, I just don't think Jalen Hurts can match. But we will see who is right and wrong about that. Santiago D. Arn said, flew in from Missouri to see the family, my alma mater, for Thanksgiving. Thankful for them, BA and DawgNation. Go Dogs. Santiago, we're thankful for you as well. Let me hit a couple more comments. We'll get ready to get out of here a couple minutes early, let some of my folks get back to their Thanksgiving who were helping me out on the show today. Gary Westmiller says, if we want to control time of possession, we're going to run a lot against Georgia Tech. Again, or our offensive line is going to dictate the game. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that offensive line for Georgia really establish a big push against the Yellow Jackets for sure. David Hill says, we need to play and beat Alabama. Bama is the program. We need to beat them. That's going to help with recruiting in the future. I think there is a case to be made that a victory against Alabama, as Jeff Santel's pointed out a couple times, would sort of add to the name brand for Georgia. Probably no doubt about that. Adrian Hill says, if Bellamy has a good game tomorrow, it's an easy win, if not a long day. And really, when you've seen Georgia teams dominate Georgia Tech in the Paul Johnson era and really almost Any team that has good athletes the same way. Clemson's been like this. Miami's been like this. And those outside linebackers get around the Georgia Tech offensive tackles and kind of seal off those edges. It becomes really hard for Tech to have the outside runs because that's the key to the offense, right? I mean, Tech's essentially pretty simplistic in that it tries the interior runs to see if they can get away with that. Most teams are going to stop that and then push it outside. And the Tech big plays over the years kind of come on those sort of outside runs. But if you can't, if you can't, get your offensive tackles to sort of set that edge against the outside linebackers, it becomes a very long day. And that's what's sort of plagued Tech against Georgia in the past. My guess is with both Carter and Bellamy on Saturday, that'll be kind of the same thing. Nate Thomas predicts 45-12. I don't know if it's that bad, but I do think it's probably a comfortable Georgia win. Michael Morrow quotes the great Ric Flair saying, to be the man, you'll have to beat the man. Right now, Saban is the man, and that's why there is so much prestige involved in potentially getting a win against Alabama in the SEC championship. Don't deny that. Final comment of the day belongs to Henry Carter, who says, let's worry about wrecking Tech and worry about everything else 1 week at a time. So, Henry, that's well said. We'll let that be the comment that sort of ends our discussion. Dog fans are thinking about Tech. A chance to go get the big victory in Bobby Dodd Stadium tomorrow. Kind of get the final stop on at least the 2016 version of the Revenge Tour. Tech did beat Georgia last year. The Georgia seniors looking to kind of get some revenge for that in Bobby Dodd Stadium tomorrow. We'll talk to you about it after the game on the Dixie Vodka postgame show. Hope you'll join us there for that. I'll be back again at 10 a.m. Eastern time on Monday for another episode of DawgNation Daily Live. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. Hope you make it a great weekend. Enjoy all the football, and let's get ready to enjoy a UGA victory as well. We'll talk to you on Monday. See you then.